For me is that it says I would prefer not to. Not I don't prefer to do it. So it's not that a predicate is denied, it is that a non-predicate is asserted. And I will say what's the difference. Kant gives a wonderful difference, establishes it, which is why he is for me the greatest theorist of zombies. Look, if I tell you, you are not dead, I deny a predicate. What does this mean? It means simply you are alive if you are not dead. But if I say, and I hope you know Stephen King and all that, if I tell you not you are not dead, but you are undead, this means something different. Living dead, monster, and so on. And this, between the two domains, this is in a way the domain of spirit, in the wonderful ambiguity of the word. Spirit Geist means spirit as pure thinking, and Geister, those who make us fear, terrorize us. And I think this ambiguity is crucial.
Das erinnert mich an einen Witz, den Sie immer so gerne erzählen. Der Witz, in dem es um die Betonung geht der Negativität. Sie erzählen immer diesen Witz von einem Gast, der in ein Restaurant kommt. Er bestellt einen Kaffee ohne Rahm und der Kellner sagt, leider haben wir keinen Rahm mehr, ich bringe Ihnen einen Kaffee ohne Milch. Geht das auch?
Weil wir nur Milch haben, ja.
Genau, weil wir nur Milch haben. Warum ist es ein Unterschied? Kaffee ohne Milch oder Kaffee ohne Rahm?
You see, in meine Volksrepublik, where I would have been a minister, you would get 2 years of re-education camp, not good. Because this is what Hegel is about. This is the best example of what Hegel calls bestimmte Negation, determinate negation. That negation is part of what an object is, what it is not. So, of course, materially, coffee without milk is the...
And confirmed, and by these presents who grant, bargain, sell, a lien, to the said part of the second part, and to his heirs and assigns, forever, and all that lot, said
yes.
Rochester,
I've come in answer to your advertisement.
As number 106.
Oh, yes, of course. Come in here, please. Sit down. Your name?
Bartleby. Herman Melville's short story Bartleby the Scrivener is perhaps one of the most fascinating and, for some, infuriating works of American literature. What's really interesting about it is, in some ways, we can't even say for certain who the main character is. Is it Bartleby, the character of the title, for whom we have very little in the way of motivation? We only have his non-motivations, the things that he prefers not to do, really. Or is it the lawyer, who we hear a lot of self-description of, but we don't even really have any name for him? Well, it's hard to say. Now, a lot of people have argued that Bartleby the Scrivener is about things like social class, but I don't think that's right. Melville, in his Bartleby-like way, mulishly refuses to give that to us. There are lots of ways that Bartleby could have been rewritten so that the lawyer is much more forceful with Bartleby. He is exercising his authority in very dictatorial ways. But that's not really what happens. You also could have Bartleby much more like Ginger Nut, someone who's much more closely connected to the lower class, but we don't see that. Now, that being said, you can't completely throw away issues of social class or just generally issues of finance. One of the central metaphors seems to be the idea of the wall. Wall Street. At the time, people still remembered that it was named for a wall. And of course, Bartleby spends a lot of time just staring at a wall, and he himself is wall-like, just sort of implacable, unmoving.
Bartleby! Bartleby, quick, I'm waiting. What is wanted? The copies you've made, we're going to examine them. I hear.
I would prefer not to.
Bartleby, why do you refuse?
I would prefer not to.
These are your own copies we're going to examine. It'll save you work. We can check all 4 sets at once. It's common practice. Every copyist is expected to help examine his copy. Isn't that so? Can't you speak? Answer me.
I prefer not to.
Go to the next room and tell Nippers to come in here.
I would prefer not to.
Will you tell me, Bartleby, where you were born?
I would prefer not to.
Have you any relatives living? Will you tell me anything about yourself?
I would prefer not to.
Tell me now that you'll help examine your copies tomorrow or the next day. And what I want is for you to say now that in the next day or two you'll begin to be a little reasonable. Say so, Bartleby.
At present, I prefer not to be a little reasonable.
Some weeks passed, during which I gradually became persuaded that these troubles of mine had been predestinated from eternity. I began to feel that Bartleby was billeted upon me for some mysterious purpose of an all-wise providence, which it was not for a mere mortal like me to fathom. I determined to persecute him no more. He was harmless and noiseless as the furniture, standing there behind his screen, looking out of the window at a blank brick wall. I never felt so private as when I knew he was there. Unfortunately, I could never persuade others to think of Bartleby in just the same way.
With submission, sir, I think you're being imposed upon.
But why, Turkey? Why?
With submission, sir, I think something ought to be done about him.
About Bartleby, you mean? Well, but what can be done about him?
With submission, sir, couldn't we call a police officer?
What, Turkey? What did you say? A police officer? On what grounds could we have him removed?
With submission, sir, vagrancy.
What? Bartleby, a vagrant? A wanderer when he refuses to budge? It's precisely because he isn't a vagrant that he's still with us.
Then may I suggest no visible means of support?
No, no, Turkey. He does support himself. I don't know how, I'm sure, but he certainly does. And no man can produce a better proof of his power to support himself than by doing so. No, that won't do.
With submission, sir. He's getting us talked about. I've had it from Mr. Winterbottom's clerk. He called here when we were out to lunch, all except Bartleby. So up goes the clerk to ask him when you were expected back, sir. But he says not a single word. He stands there silent in the middle of the room.
Like the last column of some ruined temple. Yeah. The man must certainly have been put out.
I know who'd be put out if I had my way. I said I know who'd be put out.
Yes. Nippers, please mind your own business.
Hello? Mr. Cruikshank, please. Oh, good morning. Last week I looked at your office to let in King Street. Is it still available? It is. Good. How soon can I move in? Right. Will you prepare the lease for me? Thank you. Goodbye. I have decided to move to new offices. There will be no further need of your services. I have terminated your employment. Therefore, you will have to quit this office.
Bartleby, what are you doing here? Are you aware that you are causing a great deal of trouble for me by persisting in occupying this lobby? Now, one of two things must take place, Bartleby. Either you must do something, or something must be done to you. What kind of work would you like to do? Would you like to find a position with another public records company?
No. I prefer not to make any change.
Maybe you'd like to work for a collection agency.
No. That doesn't suit me. But I'm not particular.
I know. How about work on a ship? Breathe some fresh sea air. Completely change your outlook.
Ship is too confining. I'd not like that.
Too confining. You confined yourself to my office for months.
There isn't anything definite about work on a ship. I prefer to be stationary.
Fine. How about a job as a museum guard? They're quite stationary. You could stare at paintings instead of the air conditioning vent.
I prefer the vent.
How about a career in pest control? I can recall my high school guidance counselor recommending that line of work to many underachievers.
I prefer to not work in pest control.
So some of the major themes from this story, first of all, isolation and solitariness. We know that the character of Bartleby stands for, is metaphorical to the concept of isolation and solitariness. Someone who works in a very busy space like Wall Street is completely isolated. He's a recluse, and there is no interest in him to even speak to people. And this talks a lot about the urban space and the busy world of commerce and business, where there is no human connect or there is no communication possible. So if you look at the story throughout, you do not see these colleagues attempting to even make a conversation possible with Bartleby. He refuses it. He is someone who has completely lost that hope in humanity, and he realizes somehow in Bartleby there is a belief that there is no possibility in having a conversation. There is no use in having a conversation because after all, just like in the debt letter office, human emotions are something like those debt letters. There are no takers for it. And the second connected to this theme is the theme of the mechanical nature of work in the Wall Street.
from debt letter office, from after working in debt letter office, Bartleby actually comes to work in a space like a lawyer's office, and what he does there is to make copies of these legal documents. So there is nothing positive or there is nothing refreshing in this work. It is just a mechanical work, and as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation itself, this is something which is where these people, be it Turkey or Nippers or even Bartleby, they are just human photocopy machines. They just have to sit there and make copies of existing documents, and which are very dry papers. So there is nothing more that is expected of these employees in Wall Street, and their mechanical nature of work and how this affects their life is also shown in a much deeper sense through the characterization of Bartleby. The question of compassion and humanity, which is reflected in the work, is quite problematic, because at the outset the lawyer comes across as a very compassionate person. He cares for people, he has an understanding, he tries to understand all his colleagues, all his employees. So instead of scolding them or instead of dismissing them for their lack of dedication to their work, he tries to understand them and he tries to make a way around all these things so that his work is not affected. But the question is he showing this compassion really because he really cares for them, or is he completely concerned about his business and his profession, that he does not want any kind of conflict to arise between him and his employees, and is it the reason why he shows this compassion, which is very superficial? The fourth point, as I mentioned, is about the lack of communication connect. Throughout the story, we never get to know the real names of Nippers, Turkey and Ginger Nut. They all are the nicknames that they have given to each other based on their strange character. And the lawyer, who seems to be very concerned and care and very compassionate to all these employees, he doesn't even know them personally. He doesn't know about their family. He doesn't even mention the real names of these his staff. So there is a clear lack of communication and connect that is very visible in the story, and he tries to cover up all these things. The lawyer or the narrator, he tries to cover up all these things through his philosophical brooding. So what are the things that he has in his mind, or how these people come across to him? So it's a very detached point of view, or a detached standpoint that the narrator takes.
Hey! You looking for the silent man? There he is, sleeping in the yard. Saw him lie down there about 20 minutes ago.
Bartleby.
His dinner's ready. Won't he eat today either? Does he live without eating?
He lives without eating.
Huh? He's asleep, ain't he?
With kings and counselors.